So now let's feel for the metatarsals of the bones. Metatarsals of the feet, the bones of the feet. So the metatarsals are the long bones, which are equivalent to the metacarpals, which are not the fingers, but are within the palm of the hand. And so they form most of the length of the foot, or a lot of the length of the foot, and definitely most of the front half of the foot. So if we start at the outside, the fifth metatarsal out on the pinky side of the foot, we've already found the notch that is the proximal or the near side head of that bone. Now the distal head, the far side head, is the bump just behind the beginning of the toe. So you can begin to feel that length, and holding those two ends you can wobble that bone and you can feel that it can rotate a little and it can slide up and down. Now, the near side head of that bone is contacting the cuboid. So you can remember that you're getting some movement in there. And then you can go to the fourth one. So I'm feeling along the base of my foot that's going to touch the ground, that will form a footprint just behind the toes. That's going to be more or less the heads of the metatarsals. And I'm looking for the near side of the fourth one. If I begin wobbling the fourth one up and down, and I look and I feel around, I can actually feel the near side head moving in the foot. And then I'll go to the third, and I'll probably find less movement in that one. And then I'll go to the second. And the second actually extends back a little further than the others. It's actually a little bit longer. So you can see if you can find the head of the second, which will be connecting to the middle cuneiform. And then the first metatarsal, which is the biggest and the fattest, connecting to the big toe and the first cuneiform. So remember, we have the inside three connect to the three cuneiforms, which connect to the navicular. The outside two are going to connect to the cuboid. Okay. So you want to begin to get an image of the proximal heads, and the distal heads are quite easy to find. So what I can do is begin to wobble those, so I can turn all of them, I can rotate them against the back of the foot, or I can open them and spread them like a book, or I can wobble them like up and down, almost like I'm shaking a carpet to clean it. So as you do this with your foot, and I encourage you to do it pretty often, start to think about what shoes will generally do to the movements of these bones. And every day before I shoot video on the foot, I tend to go walking in the park, and I tend to go barefoot. And people look at me like I'm a little funny. But nothing quite feels better than feeling and focusing on the mechanics of the foot. And before you even get into the technical biomechanical details, and almost even forgetting those once you learn them, really focusing on the softness and the fluidity and the connection of the foot. I often like to think of my foot as animals of their own, like gripping the floor or moving like a cat. Just like a cat moves very slow, and they kind of place one leg and they move through, and the weight comes up, and then that leg slowly peels itself off the ground. That's exactly how my feet should work. The problem is when we lock these feet into shoes with really hard soles, most podiatrists will tell you, well, it's for protection for your feet. If you really start asking questions, some of them might be audacious enough to say, well, it's because the feet weren't designed to walk, weren't designed to run, which to me seems completely absurd. So I encourage you to get out, get barefoot, or there's all sorts of barefoot shoes out there available with softer soles and wider toe boxes so that the foot is actually able to spread the way it naturally wants to. I encourage you to check those out. So I've gained this feeling of the movement and position of my metatarsals on my left foot, and I'll go to the right foot. So starting with the outside toe, I trace up to that bump, and just behind it is the cuboid, and I can begin wobbling that metatarsal. And I can go to the fourth metatarsal and feeling for that proximal head, the near side head, feeling that movement. And the third. And oftentimes as I touch my feet, and it's happening right now, which is why I bring it up, I will feel, to me it's energy movement, but it's just sensation, really. I'll feel sensation and like a feeling, really, just a feeling starting to move in my body, and something sort of happening. Maybe I get a little lightheaded, or maybe I just feel something different. I encourage you not to push those sensations away, but to allow them to exist and to continue to explore what it is you're doing. And I'm going to go to the second metatarsal, and now I'm actually starting to roll the metatarsals. So I'm thinking about the near side head as the fulcrum point or the center point, and I'm rolling the outside in a circle. And then I'll go to the first big one in line with the big toe. And then I will begin to explore the movements of those metatarsals. So they pretty much cut directly across the foot, right? Because I have the three cuneiforms and the cuboid that are forming that arch, and then the heads of the metatarsals connect into those bones. They're pretty much in a line, except for the second metatarsal tends to be a little longer, so it tends to go a little further back, and the middle or second cuneiform tends to be a little bit shorter. But more or less, they're all running parallel, but fanning out a little bit, so close to parallel, and ending in these cross arches of the foot. And then I'm going to put my feet down, and I'm going to begin putting a little bit of weight into my feet and feeling that there's a subtle spreading in the metatarsals as the weight moves into my foot. So this is some of the motion that quite often gets blocked as we wear really tight shoes. Even shoes that are ostensibly designed to help the foot work, running shoes. They've done studies that show the more complex a running shoe, the more technology it's got designed into it, the higher the rate of injury. And the best running shoes are actually very thin-soled shoes that really don't get in the way of the natural function of the foot. So I'm feeling that spreading and spreading and spreading, and the foot starts to feel like a trampoline that's absorbing and producing the force, absorbing and producing the force. And then I'm going to think about the metatarsals rolling up. So the distal heads of the metatarsals are all round. They're all shaped like this, like fists. So you can imagine like 5 fists on each foot, just behind the toes, and then those toes connect in, just like most joints we look at, with this concavity receiving that rolling bone. And now I'm going to roll my foot up, lifting my heel. I'm going to think about that head of that metatarsal rolling down into the floor. So just from this position, I'm just going to start lifting my heels and dropping my heels and picturing the metatarsals rolling. And then I can roll outside to inside as well. Picturing that there's a little bit of roll and play between each of the metatarsals. And then I can picture the opposite, where the toe is moving on the head of the metatarsals. If you enjoyed this video, sign up for the InBody Space newsletter and share the link with a friend. You can also find original content on Facebook and Instagram.